If someone were to ask you what you thought Satan's best weapon was, what would you say? Think about that for a few seconds. What do you think it is? I've asked this very question to a number of people and have gotten some very thoughtful answers, a variety of answers. That says to me that Satan uses his knowledge of human nature to come after each of us in a very personalized and clever way. He doesn't come up to us in a red suit with horns and a pitchfork. Well, let's face it, he is far too clever for that. Don't you wish he walked around in that red suit carrying his pitchfork? He would be so easy to spot, so easy to run the other way from. But as we said, the Bible makes it clear that Satan doesn't work that way. So let's get grounded by looking at a couple of the Bible verses that describe how Satan does operate. 1 Peter 5:8, Satan prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. But we know that the lion isn't roaring when he's prowling. Quite the opposite. He's quiet, stealthy, low to the ground, hiding in the bushes, sneaking up on his prey. Satan does the same. He's clever, stealthy, sneaking without us noticing. And in 2 Corinthians 11:14 it says, "No wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light." Satan doesn't march down the street in his red costume with horns, a tail, and a pitchfork. No, he disguises himself as an angel of light. There are other verses we could look at, but these two give us a very good understanding how Satan attacks. He prowls around, setting up just the right time to attack when we least expect it. And on top of that, he disguises himself as something good. Oh, he is clever, so very clever. When we think about Satan operating this way, we should realize that this will require a great deal of diligence, constant attention on our part, so that we don't become deceived. When I think about a group of Christians being deceived, my mind goes to Revelation chapter 3, verses 14 through 18. Beginning in verse 14. To the angel of the church in Laodicea write, "These are the words of the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the ruler of God's creation. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one of the other. So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. You say, I am rich, I have acquired wealth, and do not need a thing. But you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. I counsel you to buy from me gold refined in the fire, so you can become rich, and white clothes to wear, so that you can cover your shameful nakedness, and salve to put in your eyes, so you can see." Now, you may be asking yourself, where's the deception in that? Well, the deception is found in verse 17. You say, I am rich, I have acquired wealth, and do not need a thing. But you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. You see, they think they are just fine, in need of nothing. But Jesus says not so. He says they are actually wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. They don't see themselves in any way close to how Jesus sees them. So they have clearly been deceived somehow. Listen to the first half of verse 17. I am rich, I have acquired wealth, and do not need a thing. Now, listen to the definition of the word comfortable. Free from financial worry, having an adequate standard of living, free from stress or fear. Listen to that again. Free from financial worry, having an adequate standard of living, free from stress or fear. That sounds an awful lot like I am rich, I have acquired wealth, and do not need a thing. Just like it says in verse 17. Wow, do you hear how strikingly similar that definition of being comfortable is to what Jesus says to the church in Laodicea? You could actually replace the words in verse 17 with the definition of comfortable and not change the meaning of the verse. Listen to that verse with those words inserted. For you say, I am free from financial worry, have an adequate standard of living, am free from stress or fear. Or you could just insert the word comfortable. For you say, I am comfortable. It doesn't change the intent or meaning of that verse. But look at what Jesus says immediately after that, though. He uses that three-letter word, but. But you do not realize. You say you are comfortable, but you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. Why? Why don't they realize? Because they are comfortable, and that comfort has led them to believe that they are just fine, in need of nothing. Even though Jesus makes it clear in His words to them, that is not the case. So let's ask ourselves an important question. How comfortable are we? Comfortable enough to think that we are just fine and don't need anything? Comfortable enough to not realize that Jesus sees us very differently than we see ourselves? Comfortable enough to think that there's no possible way that the words Jesus spoke to the church in Laodicea have anything to do with us? Comfortable enough to not realize that we are actually wretched or pitiful or poor or blind or naked or maybe all of the above? You see, the church in Laodicea didn't realize. Is it possible that our comfort has lulled us into not realizing our actual condition? So how comfortable are we, actually? Well, by world standards, it's hard to be much more comfortable. The standard of living in the United States is extravagant compared to many people in the world. And we could quote all kinds of facts and figures showing that to be the case. But let's instead funnel down a little bit on this comfortability question. Let's narrow our question to this. How comfortable are we within our churches? You see, Jesus wasn't talking to the world in Revelation chapter 3. He was talking to the saints in His church. So is it possible that Satan is more than willing to use this comfort we enjoy to deceive us? Is it possible that our comfort is one of Satan's most clever weapons? Think about that for a bit. Can comfort really be a weapon? Teenagers often do all they can to make parents comfortable before they go do something stupid or dangerous. They use that comfort to lull the parents into not paying enough attention to what's really going on. Criminals work hard at blending in so that everyone is comfortable and not paying attention. That's when they spring into action. The lion gets low in the grass and doesn't make any sounds. So his prey will be comfortable and not realize he's there. And then he pounces. It's nice to be comfortable. But let's face it, comfort also breeds a lack of diligence, complacency, and frequently leads to plain old laziness. Think about that. If you were Satan, isn't that exactly what you'd want from your victims? For them to be comfortable, complacent, lazy, going through the motions with minimal thought and diligence? That's easy pickings, as they say where I grew up. You know, It really is pretty easy to be comfortable within our churches. We actually work pretty hard at making it comfortable. We spend a huge portion of the money that's contributed just on providing a nice, convenient, and comfortable building to meet in. And we make sure we hire a preacher that's well-spoken and, let's face it, pretty entertaining when it gets right down to it. And more we see churches adding full-blown bands to their services. Some have added lights and other special effects. It's pretty much like going to a concert. The list goes on and on. Spending huge amounts of time and money on making it enjoyable, entertaining, comfortable. And how many congregations have you heard of that have different types of services at different times to fit the preferences of the members? We cater to what they like, to what makes them comfortable. So much for the scriptures that say we assemble to edify others. Our church leaders often jump through hoops to give everyone what they want, instead of teaching us that we should be there to serve and build up others. A nice building to surround us, a well-spoken preacher to uplift us, a youth minister to make sure the kids enjoy themselves, lots of coffee available to make sure our coffee habit isn't interrupted, a song leader that leads the songs we like most, or a whole other service for some members because they like different songs, a first service without musical instruments, and then a second service with musical instruments, a Sunday morning service for the traditional folks, a Saturday evening service for those that have plans on Sunday. The list goes on and on. All the things we do, the money we spend, the effort we put out just to make sure church is comfortable and to our liking. Did you know that churches collect over $125 billion in donations each year in America? And of that, over 80% of those funds are spent on church staff salaries, church building costs, and internal member programs. That leaves less than $1 in each 5 spent on evangelism programs or helping the poor, the homeless, or the hungry. Less than 1 out of every $5. So don't tell me we're not focused on our comfort. As they say, all you have to do is follow the money. Before you dismiss what has just been shared because your church doesn't do all these things we've mentioned, let me encourage you to not do that. Just because your particular church doesn't do all of those things doesn't mean it isn't busy keeping people comfortable. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons some churches don't do certain things is because it would make some people uncomfortable. So regardless of our specific brand of church, we all need to take a look in the mirror. Test ourselves to just see how much focus we are putting on being comfortable. But all this works, right? After all, you've got to get people in the door somehow. And all these things we do or don't do are for that very good purpose, right? So all these things are justified, right? It's working, isn't it? There are church buildings all across the towns and cities in America, so all this stuff we do can be criticized, but it's obviously working, right? Except that it isn't. It isn't working now and hasn't for a long time. Church affiliation and participation has been on a steady decline for over 60 years, with a quickening pace of decline since the turn of the century. Fewer people in America now believe in God than at any other time in our nation's history. More than 75% of kids raised going to church on a regular basis leave the church within a year of graduating from high school. Research shows that a growing number of church attendees don't even know the basic tenets of their particular faith. So what are we to do? In a recent meeting of the saints that I serve God with, one of the young men was leading us in prayer. In his prayer, he asked that God would help us be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Sounds a little odd until you think about it. And if I were to say it, I maybe would word it, help us be content with being uncomfortable. Help us realize that we don't grow when we are comfortable. Help us realize that atrophy sets in. Help us seek the discomfort that causes growth, that teaches patience, that builds wisdom, that strengthens compassion, that expands our faith, reliance, and devotion to God. I hope this doesn't sound too terrible, but I hope there is some uncomfortableness in your life and in your church. I hope God is challenging you to grow. I hope He is putting the things in your life that will force you to grow. I hope your fellow Christians are admonishing one another onto good works, not just politely playing their role in the mutual admiration society we have too often turned church into. I hope your leaders are expecting you to mature in your faith, preparing you for the works that God has prepared for you to do. I hope your time together with fellow saints is spent encouraging one another to be on guard for that prowling lion that's waiting in the bushes to devour you. Is your life comfortable? Is church comfortable? Are you sure Satan isn't using that to make you complacent, distracted, lazy, ungrateful? Satan is clever, far more clever than we usually give him credit for. And in this place and time, one of his most clever weapons is our comfort. In Revelation 3:19, Jesus says, "Those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline." I pray that our comfort won't cause us to ignore His love, His rebuke, and His discipline. Thanks for listening. God bless you.